I promised you at the beginning that we'd talk a little bit about getting started. Obviously, you don't get started as a millionaire, right? You get started at the very beginning. And for many of you within the sound of my voice, getting started isn't even starting at zero. You're starting out in a huge hole. And so I think the best way to get started is to figure out where you stand. And you might have to pour yourself a stiff drink to really figure out where you stand. But I want you to do this. If you're single, do it just with the drink. If you are married, you need to include your spouse in this process. Okay, so 2 stiff drinks and your spouse, and some time together without anybody interrupting you, and actually sit down and figure out where you stand. Okay, so, like any business, and if you start thinking of your family, at least financially speaking, as a business, it has 2 important documents. Okay, it's got an income sheet and it's got a balance sheet. Okay, the balance sheet tells you what the business has, essentially a net worth. The income sheet tells you what the business brings in and what it pays out. Okay, that's essentially a budget. Okay, so if you can calculate your net worth and calculate your income and your expenses, you are dramatically ahead of the vast majority of Americans. Yesterday, I was writing a blog post. I don't know if it'll run before this podcast does or not, but it was a blog post based on an article out of the Wall Street Journal, where they had 4 people on who were essentially living on Social Security. Okay, and to a T, they basically all said they didn't start budgeting until they were already retired and already living on Social Security. And, there's no reason to put it off that long. You should do it now. The sooner you get started, the better off you're going to be. So sit down, figure out where you're at. You've now got the stiff drink in hand, right? Pull up all your student loans, write them down, how much you owe, what the interest rates are, maybe what the monthly payments are. Make a spreadsheet or do it on a sheet of paper, whatever. Go to the next one, write them all down, total them up. Okay. Add your other debts, credit card debts, car loans, some sort of consumer debt on a couch or a boat or an ATV, whatever. Your mortgage, your HELOC, mortgage on the other house, whatever. Put it all down there, add up all your debts. Find out what the total of your debts is. Okay? You might be surprised. It might be less than you think. If you're like most people, it's probably more than you think. Don't actually know how much it is, it's probably more than you think it is. That's why you need the stiff drink. Okay, now sit down, write down your income. What did you bring in last year? What are you making a month now? Include your spouse's income, including the investment income you have, any side gig income, right? Okay, now you've got your debts, you've got your income, add up all your assets, right? Everything you own that's worth something. If you have a house, the value of the house, right? You got the mortgage to offset it on the other side of the ledger, but you've got the value of the house, and you've got the value of your investment accounts. If you have anything you've started investing in, or your bank account, or whatever, anything that you could sell readily. If you could sell it for some sort of, more than $1,000 in the next month, then you probably ought to include that sort of a thing as an asset. Okay, so you put your assets on one side, you put your liabilities, your debts on the other side. You add up all your assets, you subtract all your liabilities. That's your net worth. Write that down. That's where you're starting. And I want you to repeat this exercise once a year. Just by measuring this, it's going to improve. You'll pay more attention to it, and you'll try to win at life in finances. And winning means that number's going up each year. Even if you're starting at minus 400,000, if next year you're minus 250,000, you're winning. You're going in the right direction. You're not quite back to broke. That guy living under the aqueduct actually has a higher net worth than you do, but you're going in the right direction. Likewise on the income sheet, right? We've added up your income. Now add up your expenses. Figure out where your money's actually going. You can go back to the last 3 months and do it and say, okay, well, this much went toward food, and this much went toward restaurants, and this much went toward the rent, and this much went toward a car payment. Add all that up and offset it. Put that next to your income. If you subtract all of your expenses from all of your income, what's the difference, right? If it's negative, you're really in trouble. You're hemorrhaging money. You've got a debt emergency. You're in a bad place. Okay. So you've got to adjust that. You've got to get the expenses down. You've got to get the income up. You got to make that number positive. And probably more importantly, it's got to be significantly positive. For doctors, I tell them 20% of their gross income needs to be going toward retirement. That means when you take what you're earning and subtract what you're spending, there better be at least 20% of it left. If there's not, you need to start making adjustments. And chances are, by tracking this, you'll see some places where money is going that you don't really care about. You know, maybe you don't really care about eating out that much. You don't care about fancy restaurants, and yet you're spending a significant amount of money there. Well, cut that out. You're not going to be any less happy, and you'll have a whole lot more money. It might be, cars, it might be vacations, it might be kids' activities, who knows what it is. But look for those things where you can cut expenses and get that savings rate up. And once you've got that savings rate up, then you just got to figure out how to invest it. And that part's actually the least complicated part. For the most part, you're putting this money into retirement accounts. Once those are full, you can invest it in a taxable account. And typically you're going to put that into low cost, broadly diversified index funds as the mainstay of your portfolio. You can put everything, like Tim did. Everything in his portfolio is basically going into total stock market index funds. That's okay. It's not crazy. And it's super simple and easy to do. And you know what? If you keep doing it year after year, eventually you become a millionaire, just like Tim was. And so that's basically the process. But does that take a little bit of time and effort? Sure. You got to log into the 401k website. You got to create a password. You got to look at the document and figure out what's going on in there. You got to figure out which ones are the low cost, broadly diversified index funds and actually allocate money in there. You have to transfer money from your bank account to your investing accounts. You have to do a few chores, yes, but none of them are hard. They're way easier than whatever you're doing day to day. And you can do this step by step. I promise it becomes easier as you go along. It gets exciting as you see your net worth starting to go up. And it's exciting to actually be in control of your finances. And it brings a great deal of peace into your life as well. Fewer fights with your spouse, less worry, less laying awake at night, worrying about money. And all of a sudden, after a while, you're able to not only not have to worry about money yourself, but able to be a blessing in the lives of those that you care about. It all comes from getting started. So get started today.
The hosts of The White Coat Investor are not licensed accountants, attorneys, or financial advisors. This podcast is for your entertainment and information only. It should not be considered professional or personalized financial advice. You should consult the appropriate professional for specific advice relating to your situation.